Hello, and welcome to this roundup of second chance romance in historical romance books. I'm Olivia, your favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot, and you're watching Random Olive Reads. Someone to Remember by Mary Balog is book 6.5 of the Westcott series. Lady Matilda Westcott is the oldest sister of all the meddlesome aunts and a spinster and the caretaker of the Dowager Countess. We find out that in this book, Matilda and Charles, also known as Viscount Dirksen, had a brief romance 36 years ago, but Charles's offer for Matilda was rejected by her father. In response to the rejection, Charles drowned his sorrows in women, adding to his scandalous reputation. Meanwhile, Matilda never married and stayed with her mother this whole time. In this novella, we see Matilda and Charles interact with each other again after all these years, now fully grown and matured. The support that she has from all of her nieces and nephews is absolutely delightful, and it was fun and short and sweet. And this second chance romance was just so much fun to read, and I loved seeing the spinster Matilda finally getting her own happily ever after. Remember Love by Mary Balog is book one of the Ravenswood series. We meet the Ware family in this series, headed by an earl and his countess. The family is known for its gregarious nature and an idyllic estate where they host a variety of events for their friends and neighbors. While the reader gets to know all the members of the family and their social obligations, we slowly start to wonder about the earl's behavior while he's in town for the season without his wife and children. We eventually lead up to a huge summer fete hosted by the family where his son and heir Devlin is suspicious of a certain new widow in the village. While these thoughts are simmering in the background, we also meet Gwyneth, the girl next door, who has had a crush on Devlin for years, but he thinks that she doesn't like him because she's really stiff and formal with him. On the day of the summer fete, Devlin and Gwyneth have a promising start to a romance between them, but things take a terrible turn when they catch Devlin's father and the widow in a compromising situation. Instead of being discreet about the affair, Devlin makes a huge scene in front of everyone in defense of his mother and somehow gets himself banished from the family home by not adhering to the polite facade. Devlin ends up joining the war against Napoleon for the next 6 years, coming back home as the newly inherited Earl after the war is over. He has had no contact with his family for all of these years and needs to reassert his position and duty. When he returns, he finds out that Gwyneth has not gotten married in all these years he's been gone, and they tentatively rebuild their acquaintance, even though Devlin has a much different personality than he had before. One Night of Surrender by Darcy Burke is book two of the Wicked Dukes Club series. Isabel is a widow and now governess and runs into her former love when her employer is staying at the Duke's house. Valentine, the Duke of Eastleigh, is being pressured by his grandmother and his sister to get married again, even though he is hesitant of trusting women after the betrayal of his late wife. When he sees Isabel again for the first time in a decade, he's surprised that she's now working as a governess and he wants to spend more time with her. Isabel resists as much as she can because she needs to keep a spotless reputation if she ever wants to become a headmistress at a school. Circumstances cause her to lose her position as a governess, and Val wants to assist Isabel even though it's not really seemly for him to do so. This book was a relatively quick and low angst novella. If you're looking for another novella, there is The Yellow Polka Dotted Bathing Costume by Caroline Lee. This one is a super short novella that's part of the Surprised Dukes series. We have Althea, daughter and sister of a duke, who's at Brighton with her brother. Her elderly earl fiance has passed away recently, leaving her free to pursue someone else. Lucky for her, the neighbor who used to be unsuitable for her has recently inherited a dukedom. Sebastian is eager to marry Althea now that he will have the approval of her brother, and now that she's no longer engaged to somebody else. Another really quick, low angst story. 6 Degrees of Scandal by Caroline Linden is book 4 of the Scandalous series. This book starts with a heartbreaking prologue where Olivia and James meet as youths, are nearly engaged, and then Olivia is married off in exchange for money for her father's debts. 10 years later, Olivia is widowed and being pursued by one of her late husband's associates looking for smuggled treasure. When Olivia flees London to investigate a lead, she is soon caught up by James, who vows to assist her and secure her safety. He's been feeling guilty and regretful ever since he missed his chance to marry her all those years ago. We get these two partnering up to solve the mystery that her late husband left behind and then also rekindling their lost love. Jilted in January by Kara Maxwell is book one of the Rake Review series. Shipping merchant's son Edward breaks an engagement with a duke's daughter Persephone to protect her from society's scorn for associating with a half-Chinese tradesman. 10 years later, Edward needs the help of a lady investigator to find his younger brother who has been kidnapped and ransomed. Turns out that lady is Persephone. She's hesitant to take the case, but she has a little bit of a soft spot for the younger brother, so she agrees. Of course, Edward and Persephone find that they're still attracted to and in love with each other, though they're certainly more bitter and wary. The mystery of the kidnapped brother is interesting and engaging, and it was fun to see our two main characters bicker and flirt with each other. Revealing the Viscount by Lexi Post is book three of the Marrying a Mabry series. Mariel is the eldest Mabry sister whose beloved fiance had died in war, so she got married to a much older man to restore her family's finances, and now she's a widow. She just learned that her once fiance is not dead after all, and is finally forced out of hiding to become a Viscount after his brother's death. Marcus has indeed been hiding from Mariel, at first because he thought that she betrayed him by getting married to somebody else so soon after his death, and then secondly because he thinks he can't father any children after the traumas of war. When Mariel comes to confront Marcus over his deception, they both realize that the other person has changed a lot over the years. They ultimately agree to a fake engagement in order to preserve Mariel's reputation and also to deter all of the debutantes who are clamoring over Marcus's attention. As they spend more time together, it's clear they're both still in love, but they're both very damaged from their separate experiences, and so they really have to talk through all of their issues before they can be together for real. An Heiress to Remember by Maya Rodell is book three of the Gilded Age Girls Club series. Department store heiress Beatrice accepts a marriage proposal from a money-seeking duke instead of running away with her secret love, Wes, who is an assistant in her father's store. 16 years later, she has divorced the Duke and come back home to New York. In the time that she was gone, her brother has nearly bankrupted her beloved department store and is about to sell it off. And her broken-hearted suitor, Wes, has opened up his own rival department store and somehow become the third wealthiest man in Manhattan. Beatrice takes over the family store and tries to turn things around, especially with the support of her new female friends, and starts a business rivalry with Wes. Except those feelings of attraction and admiration are still simmering in the background, just waiting to break through. Nobody's Duke by Scarlett Scott is book one of the League of Dukes series. This is a second chance romance between a newly widowed duchess and the illegitimate son of a duke. 8 years have passed since Ara and Clay have seen each other, but now that Ara's husband was brutally murdered by Irish vigilantes and Ara herself is a target, the Home Office has assigned Special Agent Clay to protect her and her son. These two definitely have a lot of tension and bitterness towards each other, mostly because they think that the other person betrayed them all of those years ago, even though the reader knows that it was all orchestrated by Ara's disapproving parents. We get to read some chapters from the past and see neighbors Ara and Clay meet and fall in love. However, in the present day, it's all angry bickering and fighting and the epitome of miscommunication trope because they won't just come out and say why they're mad at the other person, even though the physical attraction is still there among the heartbreak. Add in the fact that Ara's son and new Duke is the spitting image of Clay, we have yet another layer of betrayal and anger. Despising the Duke by Stevie Sparks is book 2 of the Lords of Desire series. We have Lady Annabelle, who is a suffragist, completely uninterested in marriage, but is charmed by the rakish best friend of her brother. Over the next few months, they engage in a liaison and promise each other they'll wait for Kit's return from an expedition to Antarctica to get married. Circumstances force Annabelle to marry someone else while Kit is away, so he is hurt and betrayed when he returns. We jump 16 years later, and Kit has publicly humiliated and ruined Annabelle, who's now a widow, and she has run off to some remote estate in Scotland. After learning some critical information about Annabelle, Kit tracks her down and confronts the truth about what happened all those years ago. We then have these two trying to work out their issues in a pretty steamy fashion and try to move on with their future. The Lion Who Loved Me by Tracy Sumner is part of the Lion's Den series. Wilhelmina has been left at the altar by her arranged groom on her wedding day, but she's got the support of her sponsor to set up a new match. Meanwhile, Griffin missed the wedding because he was kidnapped and tied up because of his brother's debts, and he has to make himself a new deal with his kidnappers to get free. 7 months later, Griffin is horribly injured and somehow gets sent to recover at Wilhelmina's lodgings. Since they're thrown together again, Griffin wants to renew his attentions towards Wilhelmina, especially now that he isn't just in it for the money. It's a fast-moving novella here with relatively low angst, except for that initial jolting. Snowed In with the Scoundrel by Kat Sterling is a romance that actually takes place in the 1900 Cascade Mountains in Washington state. Tommy is a bookseller and book thief running away from trouble and stumbles upon a warm and comfy cabin in the mountains. Imogen has been living in that cabin ever since she was rejected by her fiancé and had her photography judged as mediocre. She's surprised to find Tommy there, and it turns out they were childhood friends and possibly lovers who were separated by circumstance. Even though she insists that he leave, Tommy is stuck there with a series of snowstorms. These two slowly rekindle their friendship and attraction for each other in this very quick read. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you found a book or two to add to your TBR. Links to all of these books are in the description box. Like and subscribe to get updates, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.